testing. Testing, 1, 2, testing.
Hey, how's it? Hi. So, what? Good, good. And yourself?
Hey,
Yeah,
good.
it's fine. Yeah, no complaints. So, tell me, how's it going to how's it going to work tonight? Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And how long have people you usually spoken for? Okay. 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 Okay, cool. Okay, so there are questions. Okay, that's fine. Okay. 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 That's fine. No, no, it's okay. And what ti 8 o'clock. That's fine. Okay, that's
Are we gonna have questions after each talk or at the end of all this?
okay.
Stephanie Roche is gonna uh, join my presentation as well. If that's okay. I really don't mind.
No. Mm-mm. Yeah. Jurasich. Yeah. That's a, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
I have slides. Yeah. Sure. Give me a second.
Hi. How are you? Good, good. Okay. It really doesn't bother me. Okay. All right. No, just need to talk. Yeah.
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 Hmm. Okay. Cool.
Just sorry.
It's my headboard, actually. I'm sitting in bed. But we'll go with that. Mm.
Is it? Okay, sharing my screen now. Is it working? I think it's more commonly known as Stanger Hospital. You're welcome to.
Mm.
Okay. No, it's okay. She was just, yeah. So is everyone going to join via the YouTube link or are they?
Mm. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. I think that's everyone. And we've still got some viewers in YouTube. Could everyone in the YouTube chat please let me know if they're getting this video? I know there's a bit of a delay, but welcome everyone to the third installment of our internship talk. We're really looking forward to hosting everyone tonight. We've got 3 fantastic doctors, 2 of whom are in KZN, and someone needs to be muted, and 1 of whom is in Cape Town. Sorry, that was Alessio. But we're really looking forward to having everyone tonight. The last 2 nights have gone really well, so we will be recording. Cool, it seems like YouTube is up. We'll be recording so everyone can see, and we're live streaming on YouTube. So if anyone, does anything silly, you are being recorded. But if anyone has any questions, like usual, please pop something into the chat or unmute yourself and ask. Unmute yourself and ask. We will be relaying all the messages to the speakers. And also YouTube, please pop your comments and we will relay them to the speakers. But let's kick things off tonight. We're starting with Dr. Stefan van der Walt, who is a first-year intern at Stanger Hospital. He graduated from UCT last year. So, if we could all welcome Dr. Stefan. I believe he has some pictures and slides for us. So we want to pop those up and we'll get things rolling. Cool.
Thanks. Cool.
Yeah, there we go.
Can everyone see the slides?
Cool.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. So I'll be talking about Stanger Hospital, which is now known as General Justice Chizenga Mpanza Regional Hospital. I'll also be joined by Dr. Stephanie Roche with her expert opinions. I'll be speaking about the hospital itself and some of the things that go with it, like the accommodation and the area. Cool. So as you can see, it's located in KZN, in a district known as Ilembe, in a town known as Kwadukuza, which is a new name for Stanger. Stanger is a semi-industrialized town, for those of you who don't know. Most of its population work in factories or on the surrounding farmlands. Stanger itself is found on a strip of the north coast known as the Dolphin Coast, which is well known for its warm weather and beautiful beaches. It's also a very popular holiday destination, which is where you will stay if you go to Stanger. You'll most people live in places like Belito, Zinkwazi, and Blythesdale Beach, which are really beautiful places to live in. Belito has all your basic amenities. There's lots of shops and gyms and restaurants. You do obviously need a car to live in these areas. It's about a 20-minute drive from these places. It's a bit pricey to live in Belito itself. As you go more north, it's a bit cheaper, but you can expect to pay around 6,000 Rand for a 1-bedroom apartment. So it's not quite Cape Town level, but it's still pricey. If you want to go to a city, Mhlanga is 40 minutes drive south. As you can see in here, you do get rural allowance, which is about 18% of your base salary, which is about an extra 4K a month. So before I talk about the hospital itself, I just again like to emphasize what an amazing place it is to live in. And I think that is one of the major drawing points of working at Stanger Hospital. You're close to the Drakensberg, close to Durban, close to plenty of game reserves. And even if you choose not to go there, or you're restricted to just Saltrock and Belito, there's still a lot to do. Additionally, the weather, it's basically a tropical paradise here. So in terms of the hospital itself, I'll speak about each department and things like calls and stuff like that. Everyone always speaks about the ratio of supervision and independence. And and you generally want a good balance of both, I think Stanger has a reasonable ratio. It's a regional hospital, so there are consultants on site and some registrars, but there's mostly just medical officers, and so it's not quite as academic as tertiary institutes, and certainly not like Groote Schuur. But the quality of care that the patients receive is reasonable, and you will have a lot of opportunities to learn. In terms of departments, surgery has an amazing department. It's very laid back. You will see a lot of general surgery, trauma, and neurosurgery, although it's mainly just head injuries. And it's mainly up to you how involved you want to get. You can spend days as a glorified phlebotomist, or with enough persistence, you could probably do a PKA or AKA or close a laparotomy. Medicine is a lot more academic and strict. It's stressful. There's a lot of sick patients and a lot of HIV and TB. I just finished there, and it was during the COVID pandemic, so it's difficult to give a complete picture of the department. There's some good consultants, some not so good ones, but I personally think that I grew a lot in the department. They gave me a lot of independence, which was sometimes a bad thing, but I did learn a lot. In terms of obs and gynae, the seniors can be a bit intense, but overall it's a good department, and you will get a chance to cut your own Caesar. The peds department is really, really good. They're very academic and organized, and I would recommend it for anyone going who has an interest in peds. The second year rotations obviously don't have first-hand experience, but the ED department, which you rotate through, is really good. You'll learn something. They'll teach you how to do POCUS, and you'll certainly put in a lot of chest strains. Anesthetics is good, and ortho is good as well. In terms of calls, you won't sleep. Some surgery calls can be quiet. There's not really any call rooms available. There's a new building that apparently has call rooms, but it's been they've been waiting to open it for about the last 4 years. It's been opening soon for the last 4 years, and not even the COVID pandemic could get them to open the hospital. So I wouldn't bargain on that. Most people, when they do sleep, when they do have a chance to sleep, sleep in their cars. Overall, and this is Jalapenos Express. There's not really any place to eat lunch, but you can eat your heart out, eat as much biryani as you want from Jalapenos, which are around 30, 40 Rand for mutton biryani. It's really good. Anyway, overall, I would say internship, for me, in my opinion, is a challenging time for everyone. I personally believe and hope it's not the high point of my medical career or life, but I think doing internship in a government hospital is very challenging. But I think Stanger is a good choice and offers reasonable exposure. And the major upside is that your outside life will be great. You have some back on our state. Cool. Steph, do you have anything to add?
Oh, sorry. Hello. I just wanted to add also that for me, when I was in sixth year, my biggest fear was that I would be alone at 3 a.m. and I would die, and the patient would die, and I would have no one to help me. But I think it's been so much less scary than I imagined, because the supervision is really amazing. And I'm not sure how it is at other hospitals, but I've never felt like I was alone. I've never felt like my patients received worse care because I was a junior doctor, because I always knew if I was stuck, there would be someone to call, or the person would be right there. But at the same time, if you want to manage patients independently, you are allowed to, and you are expected to come up with the plan, the management plan first yourself. So I feel like very confident in the blocks that I finished already. And I haven't had that like terrible alone 3 a.m. experience that I dreaded for 6th year. So yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to add that I think that where you live, like Stefan was saying, is so important, because I think every hospital, there'll be blocks that are really cuck, and there'll be heads of department that are psychopaths. And I think that we're all going to go through that in some 3-month rotation that we go through. So what you need to make sure is that outside of medicine, like when you go home at 4, and on your off weekends, you're like in an awesome place to live, because then I think you'll be happy even through the cuck blocks. So yeah, but everyone's different. That's just what I think.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you so much. Both of you, it's awesome to get a 2-for-1 deal out of this. We're just going to wait for some questions to come through. There's always a bit of a delay on YouTube. Like I've said earlier, if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the chat. So you said Stanger is quite close to Belito. Is it pretty accessible to, like, to get away and go to Belito? Like how far?
No,
is
you
it?
live in Belito.
Is it in Belito?
Most people live in Belito.
I think a common question then is, like, what are there DQ? Is there DQ there? And like you said, most people stay in Belito.
So there are.
What's it like?
There are DQs. They're reasonable. It's also extremely cheap. Most of the people that I spoke to who live in DQs are fairly happy, and they're clean and they've got all the basics. They're in Stanger itself. And I know there's one DQs that are on site and one set that's like a few blocks away. So those people have to walk or drive.
But it's I don't know if you said it's 900 Rand a month.
Yeah.
It's very cheap. If you want to save money, it's a good option. And compared to other DQs that I've seen, it's in really good condition. Like everything looks quite newly renovated, and it comes with like all the basic appliances and stuff. So I think you'll really save a lot of money. Yeah, but it's not that great to live in Stanger. Like there's not a lot to do, and we would not recommend.
Cool. Well, I think there's a few more questions that have rolled through here. We've got a comment from Christine van der Walt who says, Stefan, brush your hair. I don't know if that, but I think a question here from Ali Bakang says, how has the experience from the Western Cape to the KZN been like? What's that shift like?
Look, I'm not going to lie. Western Cape has a much more organized health system. For starters, there's no folder numbers. There's hardly any functional computers. The referral systems don't work as well. The type of medicine that they practice here is a bit different. Like I found that, for example, in internal medicine, I felt like in the Western Cape, you tailored your investigations and your treatment towards what the pathology is. But here it's like, okay, we'll just do every test and give every treatment and hope for the best. So it's different, but it's you get to know the system within a week and you're fine.
Yeah, I also think everyone was like, oh, KZN health system is so under-resourced. And I definitely haven't found that. There's nothing that I'm missing. Like when I'm working in a normal day in the wards, there's nothing that I wouldn't have at Groote Schuur, which is really cool. So the resources are actually like so much better than I imagined. It's more just that nothing's digital. So it just like adds extra time, but it's not, it's much better than I expected.
Okay. I think we've got another question here that says, does Stanger qualify? I think you might have mentioned this, but does Stanger Hospital qualify for rural allowance?
About extra 4,000, 5,000 Rand a month.
Okay. Yeah. And you don't rotate through any other hospitals, it's just at Stanger then?
So we're told that we rotate through district hospitals next year as part of the changed internship program. But as far as I know, no one has any idea what's happening. and I actually spoke to our internship curator today, who is actually quite amazing. She's really, she's a cool person, but she also says it doesn't seem like anyone in the higher positions also have any idea what's going on. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then maybe a question more about the living in the area, but Emlyn from YouTube says, how is personal safety in the area? How comfortable would one feel taking a jog alone around the neighborhood of the hospital?
No, I wouldn't.
No,
It's
I wouldn't feel
yeah.
safe. It's very safe outside of Stanger. Like Stanger itself is quite populated. Like I feel like you could meet a few dodgy people on the road, but if you move away from there, like if you live in the slightly more rural areas, like I know people run in the sugarcane, that kind of, I don't know. Yeah, but I wouldn't run in Stanger. But I feel very safe driving there. Like even as a woman at night, I feel very safe driving to work and home from work. And it's all like just off the highway. So it's very easy to access. I feel much safer than in Cape Town.
Okay. I think that answers the question then. And then I think the last question here from Manira, what advice would you give students on how to best prepare for internship? Did you feel that UCT prepared you well enough?
If I compare our undergrad experience at UCT, I would say it's definitely among the best, if not the best, preparation. There's always this stupid like, oh, you don't do enough practical things at UCT in undergrad, but I feel like that's nullified by I personally think UCT gives you a lot more thinking skills, and I think my advice would be to go in with a growth mindset. I think it's all about your mindset, because it's going to be tough and it'll also be great. But you just have to be prepared to adapt and learn.
I also think that people really need to make the most of being in a university environment in sixth year. Like I really wish I'd asked like 100 more questions, because I think you don't realize at UCT you're literally with like world experts on these topics, like the people who are writing the SAMF, and like you kind of just want it like the day to end. But when you're doing internship, there's no one trustworthy like that to ask. Like you always have an MO to help you, but like some of their responses are a bit dodgy. There's no one to get like, I don't know, like super academic information from. And I actually really miss having these like really like amazing academic like role models. So I think I wish I'd kind of like appreciated that academic environment more. Because now there's like MOs who worked in the field for like 20 years, so they have good experience, but a lot of their stuff is outdated and I don't know, not the most trustworthy. But I mean, they get the job done, and yeah.
Yeah, we've
But
had a lot of comments
yeah.
about chronic MOs. Is that a problem at Stanger?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Sifa and Stephanie. It's been such a pleasure hearing from you and hearing about Stanger. I don't think we've got any more questions in the chat here. So yeah, thank you both. We really appreciate you taking time to speak to us. And Danny, I did get a haircut. Things were looking a bit long up here, needed to be corrected. But we're gonna move on to our next presenter for this evening. So we have Dr. Alessio Gurisic. He is a second-year intern at Groote Schuur Hospital, and he graduated from UCT Medical School in 2018. He's currently in the Corona wards at GSH, trying not to keep touching his N95. Apart from work and not worrying about ComServe, he loves training for Ironman. So if we could welcome Alessio to speak to us now.
Hi, everyone. So I'm currently at GSH. So how I've broken up my talk is I've broken into why I chose GSH as a career move, why I chose it, and why I chose it as a personal thing as well. So in terms of a career move and why Groote Schuur and staying on where I was taught for 6 years, so the first thing is I wanted to stay in in Cape Town, and I wanted to go where there's really great teaching plus exposure, and something that was like quite familiar to me. Because like from a personal point of view, I felt like at med school, like I wasn't prepped enough to go somewhere like extremely rural or far away yet. I still felt like I needed more teaching and exposure to like correct protocols before I was to go out in ComServe and implement all of that. So the good thing about Groote Schuur, generally speaking, is that there is great teaching, and everything you are taught comes from people who are like top in their fields, and it's all been like, all of them are in contact with international people. So I definitely feel like the protocols we learn are definitely one of the best. And now that I've done around 18 months there, I feel like I've learned things in such a way that when I can go out in ComServe, I can use it, and this is the best thing I can do for my patients. And also, again, in the Western Cape, there's access to resources. And that's what I really like about Groote Schuur, is that when a patient comes in, I'm not really like, their treatment isn't going to be affected by lack of resources. And I feel like this aids in how the patient is treated, and also my teaching as well, and how things should be done. And also want to say, there are multiple like profs and consultants at Groote Schuur who you can get involved with their research. And in terms of the research you can do with them, that is a really great like CV move as well, if any of you are interested in that. So in terms of the calls and all of that, there's always at Groote Schuur some sort of senior support. There are times when I have felt a bit like a student and they don't really care what you have to say. But then at the end of the day, like, you're always using that as a learning opportunity, and also as an opportunity to learn from them as well, and like take that further with you in your career. So in terms of the rotations that I've done internal, it's all changed now because of like the whole COVID thing and the increase in number of interns now. But when I was in internal, you on call about every 5 or 6 days. There weren't always the whole 28-hour calls, but those calls, you always had some sort of senior support. And I felt like in internal, like I really learned the most, and like they see you as like someone as a senior as well, so you can like make plans for your patients, and they don't really like, you don't feel like you're being undermined by anyone senior to you. Internal, you work quite hard there. I know people think, oh, you're at Groote Schuur, you don't really work that hard, but in internal, like, interns work super hard. Like, I don't feel like G Floor would run if there weren't any interns around. Like, I think when I was a student there, I underestimated like how much the interns actually worked on G Floor and how much you learned as well. And in terms of my first CPR was in internal, and I was alone. And that was that situation you do in like final year where they tell you you're an intern on call alone at 3 a.m. and you get called to see a patient. And that was like my first one. And there was senior support around. And I must admit, like, even though the patient passed away, like, I still felt like I learned through it, and like we did everything we could for that patient. So I wasn't like completely like scared or felt like I was scarred through that. Okay, and then the next one was ONG. I personally do not enjoy ONG. You on call, You do about 3 to 4 calls a week, each of like a whole day, whole night. This is the rotation at Groote Schuur, which really, like, I wouldn't say breaks interns, but it's the one that where you take the most strain. I wouldn't say it's the most intern-friendly place for people who've been there, but like that doesn't really affect me because I don't really enjoy ONG. From a patient point of view, like patients are cared for really well there, but I wouldn't say interns are cared for really well. I felt like I learned quite a lot, but if you're super keen on ONG, I wouldn't say Groote Schuur is the place for you. I don't feel like I came out of there feeling like I've learned a lot. And like you do crazy amounts of calls in ONG, but like that's how the system is. And then surgery, the calls there, you were on call about once or twice a week. They weren't too bad. Like you'd always get like maybe 2 hours of sleep, 2 to 3 hours of sleep, which wasn't too bad. But from like a surgical point of view, because you like split between specialty firms, I wouldn't say you get a good general surgery exposure, but I knew going into internship, surgery was not particularly the thing for me. But if you like were to fight and push, you would get like more surgery exposure. And then pediatrics, you rotate through Red Cross and Groote Schuur. I personally feel like it's a great place. You learn so much. The teaching is like really, really amazing. You have people who like are so involved in research there. And there's always really great senior support. The workload is like quite a lot, but you work in teams, and I really enjoyed that whole teamwork. And again, as I've said, you learn like correct protocols for like how to treat kids. And like strangely enough, in final year, I really didn't enjoy peds, but like now that I've completed peds, I've actually like really, really enjoyed it and would consider going back there one day, which was really strange for me because personally I hated it so much as a student. The calls there, again, calls in peds, you call every once or twice a week max. And the calls also really aren't too bad. You have some calls you can sleep a lot, some calls where you don't really sleep as well. And then also Groote Schuur in terms of like how they treat interns from a point of view. I've always felt like there's really been great support there for the interns. The intern curator, they're really great with like all the forms we have to do and like anything in terms of like finances. They're really, really supportive. And there's also like quite a good mental health support. Like they, especially now in terms of like COVID and everything like that, there are actually quite a few like support groups you can go attend. And they're very, very big on like intern mental health, which I think is so, so important, especially in internship. And then I also just wanted to touch a bit on like the COVID and how that's like affects Groote Schuur internship. Like I know now like all the departments have decreased the amount of patients they take, but the one thing I've realized that COVID has done to Groote Schuur is it's really broken down hierarchies like a lot. And I know as a student, and especially in first year, like hierarchies are like quite the thing at Groote Schuur. And COVID has really put everyone on the same playing field. And now that I'm in the COVID wards, it's like from like consultants down to interns, like we are all seeing the patients. And because no one really knows like what the correct thing to do is, like your input is just as much as a consultant when it comes to COVID. And I must say Groote Schuur has done really, really well in terms of the whole COVID thing. And especially if like in terms of PPE, like there's always access to PPE. N95s, although they like aren't as available, you can always find one in Groote Schuur. And yeah, and now that we actually have a system in place for interns to all rotate through COVID, and it's not going to actually affect our HBCSA requirements to complete internship, and this has been made known to all of us. And then from a personal point of view, why I chose GSH and like why I wanted to stay in the Western Cape is I definitely feel like I've got quite a good mix of like personal life and work. Like for example, in internal, the days are super long, like the calls are really hectic, so your personal life takes a bit of a knock. But like for example, in surgery it isn't too bad. Like you can do more in terms of like your personal life. And it's also quite strange, like coming from Groote Schuur as a student to now Groote Schuur as an intern, like I see Groote Schuur in like a completely new light. Like you actually see how much they care about the students, and you don't actually realize that as a student, and you just realize how they actually want you to learn the correct things, because as I've heard from friends who are in other parts of South Africa, like you take those with you in internship, and like you don't realize how at like 2 a.m. you need to have that correct protocol in your head, because that is the best thing to do for those patients. And that's what I've really appreciated about Groote Schuur. Also, again, it's the Western Cape, resources, like there are access to resources here, and I find that it isn't like, as I've heard from friends, it's not as frustrating when it comes to treating patients. And also, like from a personal point of view, like when choosing where to go for internship is about what you make of the process. Yes, you can just like cruise through, avoid work, be that intern, and you'll still be paid, you'll still be signed off, but it's what you make of the whole thing. And you've also got to realize that internship is a stepping stone. It's not the end, you know. So like, for example, ONG, which really I don't enjoy, like you push through because you know, like in the end, you're going to go on to something that you do enjoy. So when you have those moments of like, oh, I hate this so much, it's such a dark time, you've got to realize that all calls do come to an end. The sun will rise on your calls, you know. And also I forgot to say, at Groote Schuur, like interns are really like, no, the blame isn't like, if something goes wrong, there isn't much of a blame on an intern because of the senior support. And I know as a student, you always say, oh no, I want to go out and like do the most. But you know, when a patient dies or something goes wrong and there's that blame circling about, and like who are the fingers pointed at, sure, you really do not want that blame pointed at you. And like falling back onto like one of my first CPRs in internal, you know, you want that senior around, like you want that person just to know that you've done your best, and that when that blame game starts, you want to know that, you know, you did everything you can. Yeah, and I just want to end off by saying, like, don't feel like you're going to have really dark days of internship and some really like great days as well, but like take it in your stride and as a learning experience. Like, you know, you go in there with like a mindset of growth, and you just want to like absorb everything around you. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Alessio. That was really great to hear about
Sure.
the internship experience at GSH. I think a lot of people thinking about it and have assumptions about it, but it's nice to hear what actually goes on there. We do have a couple of questions
Sure.
people have asked. I
Go
think in
for
the
it.
chat here, the first one here is from Tanvir. They say, do you feel like the extra support at Groote Schuur has prevented you from any sort of growth, especially in terms of becoming independent from seniors or dependence on resources?
Yeah. I think that is what you make of it, right? So for example, you can very easily take a back seat and be like, the senior can take over from me, you know? And that's fine, you know. Again, it's what type of person are you when it comes to your work, you know? Can you be like, no, can you show me how this is done properly? I want to step in. You know, I know quite a few people say like, oh, if you're just thrown in the deep end, you either sink or swim. But then again, like there isn't anything wrong, or there's no like, you know, we can glorify the fact for saying like, no, like you want that support there, because if they then teach you and you push for that teaching, you go away from that experience as if you did all of that on your own, and going back knowing the correct things to do.
And I think like a follow on from that is like, do you feel well prepared for your ComServe next year?
Yes and no. Like definitely going into ComServe, I do feel like I do have like correct protocols in my mind of like how to treat things. And, you know, past the first month of ComServe, I feel like everyone will be on the same page. Yeah, like I think personally I've pushed to learn, so I do feel like I will be prepared. But then again, like if you do start something new, there'll always be like a gray transition period where like if I'm sent to rural, I'm gonna have to learn to deal with that. And yeah, you just have to take it and embrace it.
Okay, cool. I mean, imagine it's the same way sixth years feel before they jump into internship. You don't really know what's to come.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think a couple questions about GSH is how many interns are there, and is it competitive to get in? Was it your first choice?
So in terms of number of interns from my year, it was, I think they accepted 80, if I'm not mistaken. Now they increased it in 2020 to your 90.
Okay.
I can't remember, but like I know it is quite easy to get into Groote Schuur, because like there is this misconception going around like don't apply to either Tygerberg or Groote Schuur because like big tertiary hospital won't do anything. But you know, once you're there, you actually realize how much they care for the learning of the interns. And if you put it down as your first choice, there is like quite a high probability you will get in.
Okay, cool. And yeah. I think you've already sort of mentioned it, but with all the staff and people at Groote Schuur, like, did you have any issues with fulfilling your logbook? Did you get to do like all your C-sections? Did you struggle with that? Like any of those issues?
So in terms of the logbook, I think look, I don't know how it works in hospitals across the country, but I don't know how the HPCSA views all of that, but I just know if they sign you, like if your consultant signs you off, they don't really check to see if you've done everything. But so for example, like in internal, you do like large amounts of things, like you see it all on G floor. ONG is the only one where it's like a bit sticky. They don't allow it, like it's very hard to cut Caesars. You have to push for them. They sign you off pretty easily. But personally, I don't feel like I learned quite a lot from ONG, but I'm okay with that because I know going in, like ONG is not for me at all. Surgery and peds, again, you do quite a lot. And in like, there are, like if you do push, they will allow you to do a lot of things. But then again, they allow you to do things like properly, and you learn how to do it like in the correct way, which is what I think is one of the most important things going forward. Because like when you're in ComServe or in MO, you need to, like, as I said, fall back on things in your mind, which you've learned as an intern, and how to do things properly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
There doesn't seem to be any more questions for you, but thank you so much for letting us know what the experience is like at Groote Schuur. I think a lot, like I said, a lot of people like consider it, but have this misconception about interns don't do anything. But I think you've definitely told us that's not the right full process. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I think we're gonna move on now to our next speaker tonight. So our next speaker is Dr. Amy Booth, born and raised in Durban and graduated from UCT Medical School in 2018. She is now doing her internship at King Edward Hospital in KZN. She was very active in both SHAWCO and Surgical Society during university and believes that the skills she learned there are invaluable for internship and future life. She has an interest in internal medicine and public health and plans on eventually specializing while continuing to engage actively in research. So we all welcome Amy to present about her experiences at King Edward.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me this evening. It's a pleasure to be able to share my experiences of internship. So I'm doing my internship at King Edward Hospital. I think under the internship choices, it's actually listed as the Durban Complex because you spend a few months at Wentworth Hospital. Now, as second year interns, we only spent 3 months at Wentworth, but it's now going to change for you guys because you do 6 months of family medicine. So you will be spending longer at Wentworth. So I'll touch on Wentworth a little bit later, but let me just start with King Edward Hospital itself. So King Edward is situated in Umbilo. It's about 10 minutes drive from Durban CBD. So as Stefan was pointing out, where your hospital is situated is very important for your outside life. The fact that it's so close to Durban itself is fantastic. It means you can go to the beach whenever you want. There's lots of cafes nearby. You can have a life, and that's very important. King Edward is a tertiary level hospital and it falls under the UKZN Medical School. So this means that you get students. Obviously, during COVID times, we haven't been getting any students, but they are a big help when they are there. King Edward caters for a wide range of communities, and it is often the referral hospital for a lot of district hospitals and community clinics in the area. So you see a wide range of conditions. In terms of the facilities, as Stefan mentioned, KZN hospitals are a big wake-up call. They're old hospitals. The facilities are often run down. They need a paint. Sometimes the toilets don't work. Sometimes the call rooms are non-existent. But at the end of the day, they do work. King Edward consists of several inpatient wards as well as outpatient clinics. As opposed to Groote Schuur, which is very much on levels, King Edward is quite a flat hospital. So all of your clinics are mostly on the ground floors, and you have to walk quite far in between them. So your internship will be spent doing a lot of running. It has recently been refurbished because a few years ago they had a storm which actually took out the surgical block. So the surgical block, the anesthetic orthopedics block, is very it's very well renovated. It looks like a private hospital. So working in those wards is fantastic. But some of your other wards are very run down. You'll often see mosquitoes. We have a herd of black cats around. Sometimes there are cockroaches, so it is a wake-up call. King Edward has everything you need in terms of resources, though. It has a blood bank, which works very well. It has its own laboratory, X-ray, CT departments. These work fantastically. You will, however, be running to these a lot. As Stefan said, nothing in KZN is online. So if you want to order an X-ray, you sometimes have to push the patient there yourself. You have to go there and fetch the X-ray. None of it is online. One of the advantages of the facilities of King Edward, though, is because it's attached to the medical school, it has a cafeteria, which is very great. It does great ice mockers and pastas. So obviously it's closed now because of COVID, but when it is open, that's a great place for you just to go and chill in your lunch breaks, which is very important because you don't want to be spending your entire life stuck in a hospital in the wards with no breaks. Now, I mentioned that we spend some of the time at Wentworth Hospital. Wentworth is situated in the Bluff, in Wentworth area. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it. It's about half an hour's drive from Durban, so it's a little bit further out. It deals with a very interesting population. So you see a wide variety of conditions, from your medical conditions to trauma. There's a lot of drug abuse that goes on in the community, so you get a lot of experience in that sort of thing as well. So Wentworth really toughens you. You get a lot of experience in the casualty, in the trauma setting, and it will teach you how to manage in stressful situations. I know Tashar gave a speech yesterday about Baragwana, and I think that Wentworth and King Edward Casualty certainly live up to that. I remember our first day in King Edward, we were given a speech by our surgical head of department, and he told us that, King Edward Hospital is similar to Barrow in terms of trauma by something like 0.6%. So you'll get a lot of experience in that. In terms of your duties, the first thing that you must be aware of as an intern is that you can write your own scripts. I remember my first day as an intern, I was in pediatrics. I was doing my first call and I wanted to, give this baby some antibiotics. And I went to the reg and I asked them, can I actually write these antibiotics up? And he looked at me as if I was stupid. And he said, of course you can, you're a doctor now. So that's an amazing experience to actually be able to write your own scripts. But obviously you're a lot more than a paper pusher. King Edward allows you to manage patients independently, but there is always, supervision around. As Alessio mentioned a lot, you can get through internship on the bare minimum. You can just be a paper pusher. But if you want to get more than that out of it, you need to put the effort in. You can be the one running casualties, running labor wards, running resusces. You can clerk your patients completely independently, come up with your own plans for everything, and then the next time these patients are seen is on the consultant ward round. So, you can be very much an independent practitioner. But again, as I said, there is always supervision around. And there are consultants around, which allows you to get some teaching as well. I think King Edward is a great balance between experience and between supervision and teaching too. In pretty much all of your departments, you do get some lessons, some lectures. So peds, we had a lecture every day for the first month. Family medicine, you have to do your own presentations. Obstetrics, you have to do your own presentations. So you do get a lot of teaching as well. One thing that you will notice in King Edward, and I think in KZN hospitals as a whole, is that sterility is not a thing. The first time you ask your nurse for a sterile pack to do a blood culture, you will be laughed at because it's just not a thing. You do your bloods as is. You take your blood cultures as is. And it is something that is initially a culture shock. And it's something that we should always try to be sterile. But when there aren't the resources available to do that, you do have to learn to do things in a different way. If you work smart in King Edward, you will learn everything you need to gain from your internship. And you will be able to do all the procedures that you need to learn from internship as well. So look, you won't be putting in 20 chest strains a day, but you'll learn how to do it and you will be able to do it at the end of it. Good things about King Edward is that because it's a tertiary level hospital, it has things like dialysis units, ICUs. So if you play your cards right, you learn how to insert, peritoneal dialysis, hemoperitoneal dialysis. So you learn how to do these amazing things that you might not have been able to do in some of your district level hospitals. You will get all your procedures for your logbooks. You will get all your Caesars and more. In terms of your surgical procedures, because there is quite a lot of hierarchy in it, you might not get to cut as much as you want. But if you push for it, they will teach you how to do things like appendicectomies. If you work smart, you will get a lot of free time in internship at King Edward as well. When the work is done, you don't have to hang around. Because it has a lot of interns and MOs and regis as well, you can also work the calls smartly so that you get some rest on them. Depending on the blocks, you will do about 1 in 6 calls, or you will work shift work. So at the moment, for example, I'm working in casualty. So we work 12 hours shifts, either days or nights. Usually you get 1 to 2 weekends off in a month. Leave is standard, but they do try and give you the weekend before and after your leave, which really helps in terms of days. COVID has affected it significantly. How King Edward is working with COVID is that they're taking several interns from each of the blocks and you allocate it to the COVID unit for 2-week stints. So you're only there for 2 weeks, then you'll go back to your usual rotation and then you'll come back at another point to do another 2 weeks. The COVID unit is very well run, but the issue is, as I'm sure all the hospitals are at the moment, we are running out of bed space. So it does mean that they're pulling more interns out of other blocks, and it means that you will get less time in those blocks, but it shouldn't at the end of the day affect your internship. As Alessio mentioned, HPCSA is going to sign off regardless of how much time you were able to spend in your allocated block. So just some general advice about internship. The hierarchy is tough, okay? You will sometimes be left completely alone while the seniors, go and do their own thing. Often you'll become porters, messengers, cleaners. It's not in your job description, and you can try and fight it, and it will cause you sleepless nights. Sometimes it's easier just to give into the system. And I know that it's terrible to say that, but it really does get you down sometimes. So you need to be prepared for that. But sometimes you will be asked to do things that aren't in your job description. And at the end of the day, we end up just doing it because if we don't, we know that the patients' lives will be affected, not ours. As interns, you need to work as a team. Often I see that other interns slack off, or they mess around, or they'll hand over ward work to interns on call. That's just not on, and it just leads to a horrible working environment. If you have a great team, it really does make your life so much better. Okay. You will become burnt out. At some point, you will question your life choices. Some of you may even decide to leave clinical medicine altogether. But as Stefan mentioned, I like to think that this is probably the most challenging time in our careers. We are at the bottom of the hierarchy. We are doing menial work a lot of the time. You just need to accept that, push through it, and just try and maintain a balance in your life at the end of the day. I would encourage you to do things outside of internship as well, to further your future career. So courses like your ACLS, ATLS are invaluable. Okay, you need to get involved with things like research. You need to start making contacts for your future career, because remember, your seniors are watching you, and if you are a bad intern, they won't offer you jobs in the future. So make those contacts. They'll be able to help you out with jobs and reg posts in later life. The salary is great, okay? The first time you get there and you get this 40,000 plus K in your bank account, it is wonderful, but you need to use it wisely, okay? Don't go and blow it in the first month. Use it to do things like travel, experience things, pay off debts if you have to. I think in summary, King Edward is a good place to do your internship. You learn everything that you need to. It's a great balance between independence and teaching. You gain experience, and you still get to live a great life outside of it with all the amenities that you need in the surrounding areas. So if you're willing to put up with your typical government hospital shortcomings, I would recommend King Edward as an internship spot. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. We've had a couple speakers from KZN, but it's great to hear there's so many opportunities around. One of the common questions in the chat here, Tanvir is asking, how would you compare King Edward to Addington? I think we had, how would you compare King Edward to Addington?
Okay, so obviously I haven't worked at Addington, but sure. I do have some friends whose partners actually worked at Addington, so I know they always compare it to each other. From what I've heard, they give similar amounts of experience teaching. I think Addington might be a little bit more rough in terms of calls and time spent at work. But having said that, I know that Addington gives you, for example, more cutting time in surgery. So I think it just depends on what you want to take out of internship. But at the end of the day, I think most of the KZN hospitals are quite similar.
Okay. And then speaking about calls, do you set up your own calls and choose when you take leave?
So the call system completely depends on the block. Surgery and medicine work in units. So every 6 days or every 5 days, your unit will be on call. So that's a standard. Things like peds, casualty, obs and gynae, you set up your own roster. And that's great, but it also depends on who's setting up the roster. So you need to choose that wisely and send in your requests as early as possible. Try and be the one who makes the roster, because then you can decide when you get to be. But generally it's very fair, and I would not say that we overworked in any way in terms of calls. You do get to choose when you take your leave. But again, it depends on when other interns are taking their leave. So often departments will send out leave slots and then first come, first served as to when you pick yours. Obviously, they don't want all the interns to leave over the weekend type of thing.
Sure, of course.
I see there's a question on DQs.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the DQ, it's about 800 Rand a month, and it's on the premises, and often a lot of the call rooms are actually in the DQ as well. Look, it's very basic. It's very, very basic. It's I'm not sure who of you stayed in res in UCT. It would be a similar size as a Rochester room, for example, or a what's that Clarinus room. The bathrooms are not great. Often the toilets don't have seats, the showers don't work. So if you're willing to put up with that and you're willing to cut costs, sure, it works, but it it has its downfalls as well. The rent in the area is fairly cheap. You can get some great places around Morningside, Berea, Glenwood area, much cheaper than Cape Town. Maybe about 5 to 10,000, for 2 people type of thing. The intern curator at the moment is Dr. Larissa Crinier. She is the anesthetics head of department. She's great. She's actually a new intern curator. She's very much pro interns. She works well with people, and she fights for us. She is a little bit overstretched with COVID at the moment, but if you need anything, I can send you the number or the email, and whoever needs it, contact her.
Awesome. And then just some more general stuff, I suppose. How many interns are there? If someone was to put it down as their first choice, how likely are they to get King Edward?
I would be lying if I gave an exact amount.
Sure.
I think we have just over 100 over the 2 years, but I'm not 100% sure.
Sure.
But it's manageable. It really is manageable. And I would say you have a fairly good chance of getting it as a first choice. I think a lot of the UKZN students choose it as well, purely because it's close to their home, they're used to it. So we have a lot of KZN students. But then a lot of people also want to, leave the system and try other hospitals. So if someone from the Western Cape applied, I think they would have a fairly good chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then also, whereabouts, like, where are the good areas to stay around? I mean, you said it's 10 minutes from CBD. And then what's the safety around King Edward itself like?
So look, King Edward itself is about 5 minutes away from UKZN. So, that general area is not bad. But having said that, there have also been incidences of people being robbed just outside the premises. So, you have to be careful. You can't take chances. The CBD itself, I would not recommend walking in, alone or at night. It's so you need to be careful. You need to take precautions. But King Edward itself, I feel completely safe in. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then if someone was to apply to King Edward, and if they didn't want to stay in DQ, do you have any recommendations whereabouts they should stay, or like what the area is like?
Yeah. So a lot of people that I know are staying in Morningside. It's very close, about 10-15 minutes. Then there's Berea, there's Glenwood. There is the CBD, but I wouldn't recommend staying there. If you want somewhere, a little bit fancier, you could even go up Umhlanga, that side of the world. That's about a 20-minute drive away. I'm staying in Westville myself, which is also about 15 minutes. But there's not really much student accommodation there. So yeah, there's a lot of options for that.
Okay, cool. I don't have any more questions, and it doesn't seem like YouTube's been very chatty today, which is unlike them. But I just wanted to thank you for speaking to us and taking time out. And but you are our last speaker tonight, so I just want to thank everyone else as well. Alessio, we appreciate it. Stefan and Stephanie, we appreciate it. And again, thank you, Amy, for speaking to us. If anyone has any final questions or closing thoughts, now's the time. If any of the doctors from tonight have any final tips or anything else you wanted to say, any advice to the sixth years who are applying now and thinking about these decisions, now would be the time. So yeah, if there's anything, unmute and go for it. I'm gonna give you 3 more seconds there. No? Okay. We got through it all. So thank you so much to our speakers. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone in YouTube who joined us. It's been a great evening. And yeah, I'd just like to close off thanking the doctors again. And we hope you all have a great evening forward. And the best of luck for the rest of your careers. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening. And yeah, bye.